Have you ever noticed that the most desirable people never beg for attention? While you desperately strive to win someone over, they simply exist, and everyone gravitates around them like planets in orbit. Machiavelli discovered why this happens over 500 years ago, and today you'll understand the psychological mechanism that turns anyone into a magnet for desire. In 2 minutes, I'm going to show you the phrase that makes anyone chase you, even when you're clearly not interested. Let me tell you about Maria. She worked at a digital marketing company, and for 8 months she'd been completely in love with Ricardo, the sales manager. Every day she'd come up with a new excuse to stop by his desk. "Ricardo, can you help me with this spreadsheet? Ricardo, what did you think of yesterday's presentation? Ricardo, shall we have lunch together today?" Maria was always available, always smiling when he showed up, always willing to help with anything he needed. She'd arrive at the office early just so she could say good morning to him. She'd stay late hoping they'd catch the elevator together. On weekends, she'd like all his Instagram photos in less than 2 minutes. The result? After 8 months, Ricardo treated her like furniture. He was polite, sure, but he saw her as that helpful colleague who's always there when you need her. Nothing more, nothing less. To him, Maria was as predictable as the sunrise. Meanwhile, Clara worked on the same floor, a graphic designer, focused, always wearing headphones. When Ricardo tried to strike up a conversation with her, Clara would take off one of her headphones, respond politely, and return to work. When he made jokes in the WhatsApp group, she ignored it. When the team went out for happy hour, Clara sometimes went, sometimes not. "I have other commitments," she would say simply, without explaining herself. Guess who Ricardo invited to dinner at the end of the year? Clara. And when she said she was busy that week, he persisted, "What about next week or the week after?" He literally begged for a break in her schedule. The truth is brutal and goes against everything you've been taught about relationships. Availability kills desire. When you're always there, always accessible, always willing to put your plans aside for someone, you become predictable. And predictability doesn't spark interest. It sparks boredom. It's like that song you loved but heard 1,000 times on the radio. At first you turned up the volume. After a while you changed the station, not because the song got bad, but because it became common, obvious, expected. Machiavelli understood this as early as the 15th century. In The Prince, he wrote a truth that still resonates in modern relationships. It is better to be feared than loved. Not because fear is superior to love, but because excessive love breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt. People don't value what has always been there. Think about the most coveted objects in the world. Diamonds are precious because they are rare. If they were as abundant as sand on the beach, no one would pay a fortune for them. Gold is worth what it is because it is scarce. If it were as common as iron, it would be used to make nails. The same goes for you. The more available you become, the less valuable you become in the eyes of others. Not out of malice, but because of human nature. We desire what we can't easily have. We value what we need to earn. Maria found this out the hard way. When she finally realized that her constant availability was killing any chance with Ricardo, she changed radically. She stopped seeking him out. She stopped making excuses to talk. When he texted, she responded 3 hours later. When he asked about her weekends, she replied vaguely, "I had a good time." Within 2 weeks, Ricardo began to notice her differently. "Maria is acting strange," he commented to a colleague. "How strange?" the friend asked. "I don't know, more distant. Before, she would always come talk to me. Maria's absence created a void, and every void generates curiosity. Every mystery sparks interest. What was once obvious now becomes intriguing." The zero principle that governs all human desire. Desire is born of scarcity. It dies in abundance. When you understand this, really understand it, you will never again beg for anyone's attention, because you will realize that those who lack self-worth beg, and those who do have self-worth simply exist, and let others gravitate toward them. Now comes the part that will completely change how you understand attraction. Machiavelli discovered something revolutionary. People don't desire those who are available. They desire those who reflect their own desires in an inaccessible way. This is what I call the Machiavellian mirror effect. Think about the mirror in your home. Has it ever chased after you, begging to be looked at? Has it ever texted you asking why you haven't looked at yourself in it today? Never. The mirror simply exists. When you approach it, it perfectly reflects your image. When you walk away, it remains unperturbed, serene, in the same position. That's exactly how magnetically irresistible people work. They don't chase. They don't beg. They simply exist as perfect emotional mirrors. When you show interest, they reflect it gracefully and reciprocate. When you pull away, they don't desperately chase. They remain solidly in their position, creating an emotional vacuum that naturally pulls you back. Let me tell you Carlos's story. He was one of those guys who always messed up relationships. He met Sophia at a birthday party and was completely enchanted. For 3 weeks, he bombarded her with messages. "Good morning, princess. How was your day? What are you doing? I miss you." He called every day. He showed up at her work with flowers. He canceled appointments to be available when she called. Sophia, of course, began to feel suffocated. Not because Carlos wasn't a nice guy, but because he was being a desperate mirror, reflecting far more interest than she was showing. It was as if the mirror had come out of the wall and screamed, "Look at me! Look at me! Please, look at me!" The predictable result? Sophia began to distance herself. She responded to his messages with monosyllables. She always had excuses for not going out. Until one day she came right out and said, "Carlos, you're an amazing person, but I need space." Carlos was devastated. But luckily, or out of desperation, he did the only right thing. He stopped completely. It wasn't strategy, it was exhaustion. He genuinely gave up. He focused on work, went back to the gym, and picked up the personal projects he'd abandoned. He stopped checking her Instagram. He stopped saying good morning. When mutual friends mentioned Sophia, he'd just say, "Oh, cool," and change the subject. 3 weeks later, something extraordinary happened. Sophia texted, "Hi, Carlos. You've been missing." He saw the message but only responded 4 hours later. "Hi, Sophia. I was busy with some projects." Her. "What projects?" Him. "Work and some personal stuff." Period. No long explanations, no desperate need to get back in touch. In the following days, Sophia began sending more messages. She asked about his work, his personal projects. Carlos responded, but always in a balanced way. Neither too cold nor too eager. He had become the perfect mirror. He reflected exactly the level of interest she demonstrated. Never again. When Sophia suggested meeting for coffee, Carlos said, "Sure. When are you free?" When she picked a day, he replied, "That's not my day. How about Tuesday?" He didn't cancel his plans for her. He didn't rearrange his entire life to accommodate her wishes. 6 months later, they were dating. And Sophia always told her friends, "Carlos has a really attractive confidence. He never gets desperate, you know? It's like he knows exactly what he's worth." Exactly. Carlos had unconsciously learned the Machiavellian secret, to be the unshakable mirror, not the anxious mirror that distorts the image, nor the broken mirror that reflects nothing, the balanced mirror that shows exactly what it receives. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands." In other words, people rely more on perception than reality. Sophia's perception of Charles changed completely when he stopped acting like someone desperate for approval and started acting like someone with options. The mirror effect works because it touches on a deep psychological truth. We value those who don't need us, but choose to be with us. When you pursue, you demonstrate need. When you reflect, you demonstrate choice. And choice is power. Need is weakness. The most desirable people in the world have mastered this art unconsciously. They didn't study Machiavelli, but they instinctively understood that attraction isn't about getting someone to notice you. It's about making someone want to be noticed by you. It's about completely reversing the power dynamic. When you turn the unshakable mirror around, you stop being the desperate hunter and become the prized prey. And everyone knows, prized prey never chases the predator. It simply exists, splendid and unattainable, making the predator work for its conquest. Now you'll learn the 3 laws that separate magnetic people from desperate ones. These laws aren't abstract theories. They're operational rules you can apply immediately to become irresistible. Write them down, because every word here is worth its weight in gold. Law number 1, be the absent present. The first law seems contradictory, but it's where all the magic lies. When you're with someone you're interested in, you need to be 100% present. Total attention, total quality of presence. But, and here's the secret, you can't always be available. Let me explain crystal clear. Presence isn't quantity, it's intensity. It's better to spend 1 hour genuinely connected with someone than to spend 10 hours being just another body in the same room. A practical example that changed my student Fernanda's life. She was interested in Lucas, a CrossFit guy. Before understanding this law, Fernanda tried to be in every class he attended. She arrived early to talk to him, stayed late waiting for him to finish his workout. He was always that obvious, predictable, clingy presence. After she learned the law of the absent present, everything changed. Fernanda went to CrossFit 3 times a week, not 6. When she was there, she chatted with Lucas in a natural and engaging way. But when the workout was over, she left. She didn't beat around the bush. She didn't make excuses to extend the conversation. She simply said goodbye and left. Within 2 weeks, Lucas began asking other students, "Does Fernanda only come 3 times a week?" He was missing her presence. That absence created an emotional void he wanted to fill. Result, he invited her for acai after training. The formula is simple. When you're with someone, put your phone away, make eye contact, and truly listen to what they're saying. Be memorable. But when you say goodbye, don't text them 3 hours later asking how the rest of their day went. Let the echo of your presence do the work. Law number 2. Reflect, don't pursue. This law is the essence of the mirror effect. When someone shows interest in you, you respond with the same intensity. Never more, never less. It's like a perfect emotional dance. When they take a step forward, you take a step forward. When they back off, you don't take 2 steps forward to compensate. The golden rule: you never escalate first. You respond, you reciprocate, you engage, but always in response to the other person's move. This creates a dynamic where you're always slightly out of reach, but never unreachable. Here's the sentence that changes everything. Write this sentence down. How interesting. Tell me more about that. Why is this phrase magical? First, because you're demonstrating genuine interest without exposing yourself emotionally. Second, because you're creating an invitation for the person to open up and reveal themselves more, building intimacy. Third, and most importantly, you maintain the position of the one receiving information, not the one begging for attention. Once João learned this phrase, he tested it on Amanda, a college classmate. Instead of bombarding her with personal questions or trying to impress her with his own stories, he simply used, "That's interesting. Tell me more about that." Amanda began sharing more and more with him. She talked about her dreams, her insecurities, her plans for the future, and most amazingly, she began to see João as someone who truly listened to her, a rare thing in today's world. Within a month, she was completely interested in him. Law 2 works because it reverses the traditional dynamic. Instead of being the desperate hunter trying to impress, you become the valuable, confident people want to win over. Law number 3. Preserve the mystery. The third law is perhaps the hardest to apply because it goes against every relationship advice you've ever heard. You've been told to be authentic, to open up, to be vulnerable. All lies when it comes to initial attraction. Never tell your whole story at once. Revealing yourself completely is like showing all your cards in poker before the bet. The game is over before it begins. People need mystery to maintain interest. They need gaps to fill with their imagination. Remember Carlos, whom I mentioned in the previous section? His mistake wasn't just pursuing Sophia too much. It was telling her his entire life story on their first few dates. He talked about his ex-girlfriend, his job insecurities, his family problems, and his financial issues. In 3 dates, Sophia knew more about Carlos than he knew about her. Result? There was nothing left to discover. The mystery had been killed by oversharing. Once Carlos learned Law 3, he began to measure information. When someone asked, "What do you do for a living?" instead of detailing his work, hobbies, projects, and frustrations, he would respond, "I work in technology and have some interesting side projects." Period. If the person showed curiosity and asked more, he would reveal one layer at a time. Never everything at once. Always leaving something for the next conversation. Law 3 works because it respects a fundamental psychological principle. The human brain is addicted to completing patterns. When you leave gaps in your story, the other person's mind works to fill them in. And when someone is actively thinking about you, they're developing an interest in you. Here's the mini turnaround that changed everything for Carlos. He realized the problem was never stopping chasing Sophia. The problem was chasing her from the start. When he finally understood that interest is like perfume, It should be perceived, never announced. Everything changed in his love life. These three laws work together as a system. They are the tripod that supports the unshakable mirror effect. Mastering one without the others is like trying to sit on a two-legged chair. But when you apply all three simultaneously, you become magnetic in an almost supernatural way. Now let's get to what really matters. The practical plan to help you move from being a desperate person to becoming magnetically irresistible. This 21-day plan has been tested by hundreds of people, and the results are consistent. Those who follow these instructions to the letter completely transform how they are perceived by others. It's not magic. It's a method, and a method works when applied with discipline. Week 1. Availability. Detox. The first week is about breaking the addiction to immediate availability. You'll rid yourself of behaviors that make you seem desperate, needy, and lacking in options. It's like a digital detox, but for relationships. First rule of week 1. Take 3 to 4 hours to respond to non-urgent messages. It doesn't matter if you saw the message. It doesn't matter if you're not doing anything important. You'll create the habit of responding on your own time, not on other people's. Why does this work? Because an immediate response signals that you are waiting for their message, that you have nothing more important to do, that they are a top priority in your life. And that's repulsive, even when the person likes you. My student Carla tested this with a guy who'd been flirting with her for months. Previously, she'd respond within 2 minutes. After applying the 3-hour rule, he started sending more elaborate messages, asking if everything was okay or if she was busy. The lack of immediate responses added value to her communication. Second rule, say no to at least one social invitation every week. Politely, but firmly. No need to make up elaborate excuses. A simple, "I can't make it this time," is enough. This recalibrates how people see you. Instead of being the person who always says yes to everything, you become selective, someone who has criteria, someone who needs to be won over to say yes. Third rule of the first week. When someone asks, "What are you doing?" your standard answer will be, "Some interesting projects." Period. No details, no explaining everything. This vague answer creates curiosity. The person wonders, what projects? Why doesn't he share the details? He must be busy, someone with important things going on in his life. Week 2. Mirror activation. In the second week, you'll put the mirror effect into practice. This is when you stop being the hunter and become the mirror, reflecting interest exactly as it receives it. First mission. Practice the magic phrase, every day. That's interesting. Tell me more about that. Use this phrase at least 3 times a day in different conversations. It will seem artificial at first, but within a week it will become second nature. The power of this phrase lies in the complete reversal of the dynamic. Instead of trying to impress by talking about yourself, you make the other person feel interesting and special, and people are attracted to those who make them feel special. Second mission of week 2. In every conversation, ask 70% questions and 30% statements about yourself. The math is simple. Those who talk more feel more connected. If you get someone to talk more about themselves, they'll like you more. Rodrigo applied this rule on a first date with a woman he met on a dating app. Instead of trying to impress by talking about his career, travels, and achievements, he was genuinely curious about her life. He asked about her dreams, her most memorable experiences, and her passions. The result, she left the date telling her friends that he was the best listener she's ever met. Third mission. End conversations when they're at their peak, not when they're dying. This is counterintuitive but essential. When the conversation is flowing perfectly, when you're laughing, when the connection is strong, you end gracefully. "It was great talking to you, but I have to go. Talk to you soon." This creates what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect. People remember unfinished experiences more vividly. They'll be left wondering, why did he leave right at the best part? Week 3. Unshakable solidity. The third week is about building a solid, unshakable presence. It's when you stop justifying yourself and start simply existing as someone with clear, unshakable boundaries. First rule, don't justify yourself when choosing to do something alone. If you decide to stay home on a Friday, you don't need to explain why. "I'd rather stay home today" is a complete answer. No, sorry, but no, I'm just tired. No making up commitments. Your choice doesn't need external approval. Second rule of week 3. Always have a personal project more important than any relationship. It could be a course, a book you're writing, a trip you're planning, a business you're starting, something that's a priority in your life and can't be interrupted by romantic whims. This isn't about being insensitive. It's about demonstrating that you have a rich and interesting life independent of relationships. And that's extremely attractive. Third rule: when someone tests your limits, simply restate your position without explaining. If you said you can't go out on a Tuesday because you have a gym, and they insist, "Oh, but you can skip one day," your response is, "Tuesday's not for me. Do we have other options?" Without justifying yourself, without explaining why the gym is important, without negotiating your limits, you simply calmly reaffirm your position and offer alternatives. Lucia tried this with a suitor who kept trying to make her change her plans. When she started being unwavering about her own boundaries, he stopped testing her and began to genuinely respect her. "You have a strong personality. I like that," he said 3 weeks later. By the end of these 21 days, you will have completely transformed, not into someone cold or calculating, but into someone with clear boundaries, an interesting life of their own, and defined criteria. Someone who needs to be won over, not someone who begs for attention. And here's the most interesting part: the people around you will start treating you differently, even without consciously understanding what's changed. You'll notice more interest, more respect, more genuine curiosity about who you are and what you do. In a moment, I'll give you the phrase that shuts down any attempt at emotional manipulation and even makes people respect you more. But first, you need to master these 3 weeks. Without it, the golden phrase won't have the same impact. The moment you've been waiting for has arrived. The phrase that will shield you from any attempt at emotional manipulation and even make people respect you more. This phrase is the culmination of 500 years of Machiavellian wisdom, condensed into a single, devastatingly effective sentence. But before I reveal it, let me contextualize why it's so powerful. Most people live in an emotional prison. They cave, buckle, and change their stance every time someone applies emotional pressure. "You don't love me. If you liked me, you would do this. You're being selfish." These phrases work because they prey on our desperate need for approval. The problem is that every time you give in to emotional manipulation, you lose a piece of your authority. You teach the person that your boundaries are negotiable, that tears, drama, or blackmail are all it takes to change your mind. And once someone figures out this formula, they'll use it against you forever. Here is what Machiavelli would call virtù applied to the modern world, the golden phrase that changes everything. "I understand how you're feeling, but I'm not going to change my position because of it." Stop everything and reread this phrase. Record it in your mind. Practice it until it comes naturally. Because this phrase is revolutionary for 3 specific reasons. First reason: it acknowledges the other person's feelings without invalidating them. You're not being insensitive. You're not saying, "It's not like that at all," or "You're overreacting." You're showing genuine empathy. "I understand what you're feeling." This deflects any attempt by the other person to call you cold, insensitive, or cruel. Second reason: she maintains her boundaries with absolute force. "But I won't change my position." There is no negotiation. There is no middle ground. There is no, "Maybe, if you explain better, I'll change my mind." Her position is firm, unshakable, definitive. Third, and most important reason: it leaves no room for emotional negotiation. The phrase ends the discussion without being aggressive. It's like putting an end to a conversation that could drag on for hours with drama and manipulation. Let me tell you how Marina used this phrase to completely transform a toxic relationship. Remember Marina from the first block? After learning the mirror effect, she started a relationship with Tiago. At first, everything was perfect, but after a few months, Tiago began testing her limits. Whenever Marina wanted to do something alone, go to the movies with her friends, visit family, have a night to herself, Tiago would make a fuss. "If you loved me, you'd stay with me. You're changing. You're not the same person anymore. I feel rejected when you choose other things over being with me." The old Marina would have canceled plans, explained herself for hours, and begged him to understand. But the Marina who mastered the mirror effect simply said, "I understand that you feel rejected when I go out alone, but I'm not going to change my position because of that." Tiago was shocked. He tried to argue, "But Marina, if you really," she repeated, just as calmly, I understand how you're feeling, but I'm not going to change my position because of it. He realized the emotional manipulation strategy no longer worked. Within 2 weeks, Tiago completely stopped making drama. More than that, he began to admire her determination. "You have a very strong personality," he said. "That attracts me." The phrase works because it operates on a deep psychological level. When you don't give in to emotional pressure, you demonstrate self-worth. You show that you're not willing to trade your integrity for approval, and this commands respect, even from people who were trying to manipulate you. But be careful. This phrase only works if you truly believe it. If you say it with uncertainty, if you hesitate, if you seem to be convincing yourself while simultaneously trying to convince the other person, it won't have the same impact. The phrase needs to come out with absolute conviction, as an unquestionable truth. Practice this phrase in small situations first. When someone tries to make you feel guilty for not responding to a text right away, when they try to pressure you into changing your weekend plans, when they use emotional drama to get what they want from you. Every time you use this phrase and stand your ground, you're building your reputation as someone who's unwavering, someone who has clear boundaries and doesn't compromise those boundaries for emotional pressure. And that reputation spreads. People automatically start treating you with more respect because they know you're not manipulable. The most fascinating thing is that after a few applications, you won't even need to use the phrase often. People around you will realize you've changed, that there's no point in trying to create emotional drama with you anymore, that your limits are real, not negotiable suggestions. Marina texted me 6 months after mastering this technique. "It's amazing how people treat me differently now. At work, in relationships, in my family. Everyone respects me more. And the craziest thing, I didn't become a cold person. I just became a person with boundaries." Exactly. The golden phrase doesn't make you insensitive. It makes you someone who loves and cares without sacrificing yourself. Someone who has compassion without being a doormat. Someone who shows affection without losing authority. Remember what Machiavelli really taught? It wasn't about being cruel. It was about combining kindness with strength, virtue with firmness, love with limits. The golden phrase is the practical application of this philosophy to modern relationships. When you master this phrase, truly master it, not just memorize it, you'll never again be held hostage emotionally by anyone. You'll love by choice, not obligation. You'll help out of generosity, not guilt. You'll be there willingly, not out of external pressure. And people will notice this difference. They'll feel like you're with them because you want to be, not because you have to be. And this genuine emotional freedom, is what makes someone truly irresistible. Power doesn't lie in being loved by everyone. Power lies in being respected by those who truly matter. And respect only exists when there are clear and unshakable boundaries. The mirror never begs to be looked at, but you can't pass it by without taking a look. Be the mirror. You've just discovered the secret that separates magnetic people from desperate ones. It's not about being cold. It's not about manipulating, it's about having so much self-worth that you don't need to beg for anyone's attention. For 500 years, people misinterpreted Machiavelli. They thought he was teaching cruelty. In fact, he was teaching effectiveness. He was showing how to be respected without losing humanity, how to have boundaries without being inflexible, how to attract without persecuting. Now you have the tools. The 3 laws of the mirror effect. The 21-day script. The golden phrase that ends any emotional manipulation. You have everything you need to move from being needy to being desired. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. Transformation only happens when you apply these laws in real life. When you truly stop chasing and start attracting. When you replace despair with dignity. In the next 24 hours, an opportunity will present itself for you to apply law number 1. Be the absent present. It could be a text you receive. It could be an invitation to hang out. It could be a conversation that's flowing perfectly. Whatever the situation, you'll have a choice. Return to the old pattern of desperate availability, or apply what you learned today. Choose to be the mirror. Choose to reflect interest in the exact measure it receives. Choose to preserve the mystery. Choose to have unshakable boundaries. Choose to be respected, not just loved. And when someone tries to emotionally pressure you to give in, to bend, to abandon your limits, you will remember the golden phrase, "I understand what you are feeling, but I will not change my position because of it." The world is full of people begging for attention. Be different. Be rare. Be the unshakable mirror everyone wants to conquer but few can break. Comment, "I am the mirror," if you're going to apply law number 1 this week. I want to see who truly has the courage to step out of the comfort zone of neediness and into the power zone of self-worth. And if you want to fully master the art of being psychologically irresistible, the next video will teach you how to use silence as the most powerful weapon of seduction. You'll discover why the most desirable people speak less, and how to turn every pause into a tool of magnetic attraction.